Hey everyone, Jono here. Last time we immolated the ever-loving heck out of Millennium Egypt with our Pyro deck, and once more successfully beat the game. So let's go ahead and add a start chip to our board. I asked you all in the comments what deck you'd like to see next, and I saw a lot of love for machines out there. Basically 2 to 3 pages worth, so this isn't even all the comments. So, with that said, let's go over the machine monster type. Machines are a fairly common type across Forbidden Memories. There are a total of 43 monsters in this game, with 15 being made available to the player in the starting deck. The rest of them are all obtainable throughout the story, with a minor exception to Metalzoa, which is only available to the player after they defeated the final 6. It drops from Sebek. With such a wide pool of monsters here, this is what our starting deck looks like. It's a little on the weaker side for now, but don't get too comfortable with it. I'm expecting big things as we progress through this story. Here's a quick recap of the rules, nothing too surprising. Okay, I cannot contain my excitement. With all of this out of the way, let the run begin.
Previously on YuGiOh.
Play that victory song as we sit atop our throne, because we have successfully gotten Millennium Egypt lit. Meanwhile, a few buildings away, after having the worst hallucinogenic trip imaginable, Bandit Keith finds himself broke, stumbling around some Egyptian ruins looking for riches. Whilst exploring, he finds an old title deed to an old abandoned casino.
Perfect! I think I'll take this one.
He hatches his best scheme yet.
Tough luck, guys. Looks like you're stuck in that cave for life. Now we gotta have a little talk.
With a plan in motion, Keith sets out to rebuild the most rigged casino in all of Millennium Egypt. It's time to get our gambling freak on, but first we need to scope out the land. Exiting the ruins, we bump into this blue roulette ball who overheard our scheming in the ruins and wants in on the action. Now that we're in a duel, let's take a deeper look into our machine deck. The deck list you see now is going to drastically change a number of times, given that all the good machine cards are spread throughout the mid and late game campaign. I believe this deck would genuinely increment in strength alongside the story based on where each of the cards are dropped. In our starting card pool, our strongest card is Disc Magician at 1350 attack, with our weakest being Steel Scorpion at 250 attack. In terms of deck power, you might be thinking, hey, we're on par with our Pyro deck, given that Fire Yarrow was our strongest monster at 1300 attack. If those are your thoughts, slap yourself upside the head and remember what game you're playing. I'll cover off why in the next duel, because for now, Simon goes down. He drops us, a Jinzo number 7. Hey, we already have that card. Having a like-minded machine player in our presence, we decide to work together with Simon, who says he has something worth our while. Whilst he goes and gets it, we take a trip down to the duel arena and say hi to the resident dweebs. If we're gonna rig a casino, we need to look the part. And Teana right here will fit nicely as a chip cashier, given that she's probably the only person in this place who can actually count. Let's pick up where we left off on machines. As a type, they suffer from equip card deficiencies in the early game. The signature equip card for machines is Machine Conversion Factory. This card is not available in the starting deck. It drops later on in the game from Bandit Keith. Till then, the only partially shared equip cards are Dark Energy and Laser Cannon Armor. Almost all the 1100 attack and up machine cards use completely different equips from one another. You only start to get commonality from the under 1000 bucket, which is not worth it since you have to burn through at least one card to make them as strong as other monsters. With my ranting aside, what I'm trying to say is that we have limited equip cards to start the game and generally weak monsters under 1500 attack who have no field spell boost and don't fuse. Yup, no inter-machine fusions until we reach all the way to High Mage Kepura, and even then there's only one. Taking out Teana with a final attack, she awards us with an ancient jar and has kindly agreed to jump on board with us. Next up, we face off against Giselle. The raggedy lines on this guy's face can only mean one thing. This bloke knows how to make a kick-ass cocktail. Either that or he's played one too many games of Goon of Fortune. And they say Australia does not have a rich culture. So with our initial machine analysis out of the way, let's cover the deck we're running and I guess our overall strategy. Our deck will run all the 1000 attack and up monsters, with any other cards being added simply being there for filler. The equips in our pool will be Dark Energy, Laser Cannon Armor, Black Pendant, and Insect Armor with Laser Cannon. Insect Armor is really only there to boost Disc Magician in the event we have to go up against any Dragon Fusions. From a Guardian Star perspective, almost all of our monsters default to Moon. We need to remember to change that around when we summon, as a majority of the early game heavy hitters are defaulted to Sun. The key word in that sentence is remember. For anyone that has watched any of my videos to date, you will realise that I often display orange goldfish energy. Firing off a Raigeki for the win, we attack Giselle again with Hologra. We win, and Old Mate drops us a Dark Plant. We respectfully decline the offer, as we're only looking for a bartender. With our bartender recruited, this little snot-nosed brat Mylaruka comes to bother us once more. Listen kid, we can't have you around a casino, it's illegal. But how good are you at getting fake IDs? All money is welcome at Keith's Palace, so if you insist, your job off record will be to get all your school friends to swap their kettle chips for some poker chips if you catch my drift. Now, back to our machine cards. There are a total of 43 machine cards in this game. A good chunk of them won't see the light of day in any of our decks. Even at this moment, there are 8 machine cards that I've purposely not included in the deck, purely because they're too weak. With the vast pool of machine monsters, I think I need to start kicking off the trivia a little earlier than normal. And to start things off, we have our weakest monster, Steel Scorpion. Steel Scorpion debuted as a common in the Metal Raiders pack. As for its anime appearances, this card was one of the many weak monsters that Chaz Princeton rescued from the reject well. Except for some strange reason in the anime, Steel Scorpion was red instead of blue. Oh well, that's about it in terms of trivia. Popping off a Raigeki for the win, we attack for game with Disc Magician. The little snot-nosed brat goes down and we get a Hero of the East. Violating several labour and federal laws, we enlist the services of this small child to distribute fake IDs. And they say Gen Z aren't willing to work. On to Old Greg. We've neglected you throughout all of our playthroughs. You're old enough to know each and every person in Millennium Egypt. Heck, you were probably there when Jesus was born. So with that knowledge, I'm going to put you in charge of the surveillance room. I'll neglect the fact that you may be potentially blind and or deaf, but I'm pretty sure there are already larger plot holes in this story, so let's just gloss over this one today. Finding ourselves in yet another easy Egypt duel, let's continue the trivia. The card we're looking at this time is Bat, or as is pronounced in Japanese, Batto. Bat released in Booster Pack 2 of the OCG and has not been reprinted since. It hasn't made any anime appearances. The only other appearance I've been able to find is that Tristan Taylor had this card in his deck in YuGiOh The Sacred Cards. So yeah, take that as you will. In terms of the card art itself, Bat has a counterpart called Darkshade. I'm going to take that as a very loose counterpart if I do say so myself, but hey, I'm not going to challenge the wiki, they're bigger nerds than I am. Popping off yet another Raigeki for the win, we attack for game with Disc Magician. Old Greg goes down and he gives us a Guardian of the Labyrinth. With most of our initial crew established, it's time to hit the town square. It looks like we have our target audience for our casino. I can already see the dollar signs pouring in. We witness Jono being harassed by security for being caught card counting. Very naughty. Seto security gives us a hard time, because I'm ethnic, but then he moves along when he realises that he's actually talking to Bandit Keith and not me, John O. Racial satire aside, we catch up with Jono and ask him to follow us back to the duel grounds so we can continue our conversation in private. Back at the duel arena, we challenge Jono to a card game just to see how good of a card counter he is. If this dweeb plays his cards right, I think we found ourselves a dealer. Thrust into another early Egypt duel, let's continue the card trivia. This time, the next card on our list is Mechanical Spider, and this one is a bit interesting. The card you see in front of you is only called Mechanical Spider in Forbidden Memories, Duelist of the Roses, Dark Duel Stories, and Destiny Board Traveler. In all other instances, this card is correctly referred to as Karakuri Spider, and I'll explain why. In OCG land, Karakuri Gumo, aka Mechanical Spider, debuted in Booster Pack 4 back in 1999, and was not released in the TCG till 2010. All translations of this card interpreted the word Karakuri to mean mechanical. Oh crap, we finished the duel. I'll pick up where we left off in the next match. Recruiting the final member of Keith's casino, security busts into the duel arena catching wind of illegal activity. Not convinced that everything is above board, Seto Security challenges us to a duel. Continuing the mechanical spider trivia, when Starstrike Blast was released to the TCG in 2010, it introduced the Karakuri archetype and printed Mechanical Spider in that set, albeit with its name changed correctly to Karakuri Spider. It was unofficially the first Karakuri monster before the archetype even released. All other media since then had this card correctly listed as Karakuri Spider. And that wraps that up. Gosh, I've said the word Karakuri that many times that I should go rewatch Karakuri Circus. It was a slept on anime and it was actually pretty decent. Anywho, number 1, let's get back to the duel. Seto Security isn't really putting up much of a fight. So we drop a Raigeki on this dweeb and attack him directly with Brave Scissor, Hologra and Disc Magician. The local security team goes down and he awards us with a Snake Ayashi. With Seto Security finally defeated, I'm sure we won't see them again. He lied. Seriously, half this game is running into Seto over and over again. Anywho, number 2, we decide to check in on Simon at the palace. He has confined himself to his chambers and is counting up some fat stacks. Suddenly, a ruckus occurs outside, and Simon runs out. Everything in the palace has been repossessed, by none other than the villain of this story, debt collector Heishin. Turns out all those fat stacks were actually a loan from Heishin, and he is here to collect on his interest. Meanwhile, we sneak through an open window and accidentally land in Fizdus's bedroom. Running outside, security has been alerted of our presence, who's busted in to detain us once more. Fleeing, Seto pulls us aside for questioning when we're both interrupted by Simon. With a shaky hand, Simon hands us a tampered slot reel for our custom slot machines. Looking sufficiently beat up, we both hightail it out of here. We're both confronted by debt collector Heishin, who has unfinished business with Simon. Looking to stall, we challenge him to a duel. Now, when writing this script, I wasn't actually sure whether to have Heishin as a debt collector or some sort of mobster. At the moment, with the way I've dressed him, he's really giving off "Sei un mafioso, Bandit Keith" vibes, so maybe I should have gone the other way. Oh well, back to the duel. Given the weakness of our deck, I'm not expecting to defeat him first try. This is all dependent on his first monster. Given that it's a twin head, I think we have a chance of actually defeating him. Unfortunately, we need to wait till we draw Disc Magician. Trying to fake him out with a Mechanical Spider, he ignores it and attacks it with Sanger of Thunder. Yep, based on this current hand, this guy has bricked. Hooray for that. Dropping off a board wipe, he's fused into another twin-headed Thunder Dragon, and the threat isn't really that threatening. With 200 life points left, we beef the ever-loving crap out of this mechanical Beyblade and lay waste to this guy's life points. With our life points at 200 attack, we trigger off the self-KO glitch, or trick, I don't know what you call it. Basically, if the AI thinks it can kill you in a monster attack, it will do so and ignore every single equip card attached to your monster. I could literally leave this guy on the field and let Heishin attack directly into him again and again. Like so. With Heishin smacking himself to a wall, we actually defeated him first try. We get an Ancient Sorcerer. After our alleged scripted loss, Simon grabs onto Heishin and tells us to smash the gambling evidence. Hurling the reel to the floor, it smashes into a bajillion pieces. A few days after the ordeal, Simon and I have gone into hiding to catch up underground. He'll be working behind the scenes on our slot machine but needs more time. As he works, we take this opportunity to have a flashback till the story is ready to progress. With the screen fading to white, we're at a tournament, and by the looks of things, it's YCS Sydney, which has received basically zero coverage from Konami. Classic Down Under YuGiOh right here. Looking at my notes, the deck that topped was, no surprise, a Diabellstar Snake Eye. Real life aside, we skip through the introduction and jump straight into the preliminary matches. The difficulty of the prelims has been dialed up a bit for our deck. We haven't had to deal with many strong fusions till this point, but here is where it all starts to change. Our first opponent is Rex, who thankfully eases us into things, dropping nothing too devastating. So, with that said, let's continue the trivia, and the card we're looking at this time is Jinzo number 7. This is another interesting card that actually has a bit of a time paradox about it. In the English TCG, Jinzo number 7 dropped first in Metal Raiders, with its iconic counterpart Jinzo releasing later in Pharaoh's Servant. Based on that, it makes sense that Jinzo 7 is in Forbidden Memories, while regular Jinzo is not. In OCG land, however, things are flipped around, but I'll cover that in the next duel, because for now, we have taken out Rex with our army of machines. Attacking for game with our unofficial cubic card, Rex goes down in one try and gifts us a wasteland. Making our way back to the card shop, we decide to save our game off screen. Why are we saving? Well, it's because we're up against the Bugmaster Weevil. The only real threatening card he has is Jiraiya Gumo, so let's just hope he does not summon that. Till then, let's crack back onto the trivia. As mentioned before in OCG land, Jinzo dropped first in Curse of Anubis in July 2000, while Jinzo number 7 released in the Revival of the Black Demon Dragons of October 2000, so it should have been in this game, right? Well, though the Japanese Forbidden Memories released in 1999, to keep the game consistent with a Western release in 2002, the card inclusions followed the international pack sequence, which stopped at Spell Ruler, a total 1 pack before regular Jinzo dropped. So that is the reason why it's not in this game. With 4 out of 43 cards covered in the trivia, we need to crack on and speed up the pace, which is kinda hard given that a good chunk of the machine monsters made their way into the anime. Anywho, number 3, the next card we're looking at is Yaiba Robo. This card released in the OCG back in 1999 in the 5th booster pack, and waited all the way till 2020 where it was released in the Speed Duel starter deck Twisted Nightmares. For its anime appearances, it appeared in episode 1 of Arc 5 in the Sledgehammer Leo's Institute of Dueling advertisement. Looking at the card art itself, the kanji painted on this card means edge, as in the edge of a blade. And bam, look at that timing, we've now reached the end of a duel. Weevil drops us a Fire Yaru and we did this in one try. Let's go save our game. We are almost at the Machine King himself, Bandit Keith. We first need to get through Mai Valentine, who shouldn't prove to be too difficult of a duelist. So, with that said, let's kick off the trivia once more. The card we're looking at this time is Patrol Robo. Patrol Robo released in the TCG in the 2002 tournament packs, and has only ever been reprinted in other tournament packs. Whereas in OCG land, it debuted in Booster Pack 3 all the way back in 1997. As for the card itself, visually it is a counterpart to the normal monster Ancient Tool. And that's all you need to know. It has no anime appearances and nothing else of note. The next card on our list is Hologra. Hologra is a counterpart to Disc Magician. For its card game release, it released in the 2nd booster pack of the OCG and has not been reprinted in English. As for its anime appearances, this card debuted in episode 128 in Battle City. Joey ends up unconscious in his duel against Marek and ends up dueling an opponent in the Shadow Realm. The opponent is using this card. With my timing on point, we attack with our Patrol Robo and Mai goes down and she leaves us an Elf's Light. Finishing this in one turn, we save our game and we finally get to try our luck against Bandit Keith. Bandit Keith has an upgraded version of our current deck. Defeating him gives us access to 9 more machine monsters and 1 equip card. The drop rates for everything isn't that bad either, with 8 of the aforementioned cards being awarded to us at any rank, leaving 2 needing an S or an A power. Unless, I guess, if we really want to hold off on those until we get to High Mage Atenza. As an opponent, Bandit Keith has a fair few defensive monsters with 2000 defense. That's going to be a roadblock against us unless we get 2 equip cards. To top that off, if we're really unlucky, he can also drop a Zoa on us. Or at minimum, a Dark Elf or a Gemini Elf. Not fun to deal with at our current power. It's frustrating. Our strongest card, Disc Magician, is at 1350 attack. This means it still needs to equip cards to hit over a mystical elf. No matter, that's not going to be a problem for long. Whilst we chip away at this duel, I'm going to try and squeeze in one more bit of trivia. This time we're looking at the card Brave Scissor. Brave Scissor debuted in the TCG in Speed Duel starter deck Twisted Nightmares. In Japan, it, like many other machines, arrived in Booster Pack 4. The monster itself features in the card artwork of Autonomous Action Unit and Spark Breaker. As for its anime appearances, it has none. Getting to the last 2 turns of the game, there's nothing Bandit Keith can do. He takes out our weaker Disc Magician and we pop off a Raigeki for the win. Attacking for game with our strong Disc Magician, we win, and Keith drops us a Yami. Unlucky, it wasn't one of the 10 cards we were looking for. Getting back to the card shop, we save our game and prep for a crapload of grinding. Defeating Keith at a B, C or D rank awards us with a Mechanical Chaser, a Ground Attacker Bugroth, a Cannon Soldier, a Cyber Soldier of Darkworld, a Gigatech Wolf, a Golgoyle, a Blocker, and a Machine Conversion Factory. At the SA ranks he drops us a Machine Attacker and a Saber Slasher. With that metric buttload of cards, this is what version 2 of our deck looks like. Effectively, all monsters have been swapped out for their stronger counterparts. Lastly, we added Machine Conversion Factory to our equip pool. Back to the game, and I think we have a Shadi cutscene to get through. Now, everything in this scene is a flashback being witnessed by Bandit Keith, who, as many of you know, likes to spy on people from random towers and I guess some distant corners. Nothing really eventful occurs. except for some inappropriate touching, dark magic incantations, doppelganger mythology, callbacks to the Dutch interpretation of relativity, and lastly, the most bizarrest thing ever, the introduction of a plot device. Letting the resident dweebs tweak out in the corner, none of this has any relevance to us. Instead, we go back to the duel arena and continue on with the remainder of the duels. Speaking of, the next opponent is Shadi. Now, normally I would recite our usual chant, but this time I might actually skip it. In other days, we'd consider Shadi to be a pushover of a duelist, and any loss to him meant that you suck at this game. But, given the way our April Fool's video played out, our wrapped up incorporeal friend actually managed to beat Nitemare using only cards from his available deck pool. Due to that mighty feat, I'll pay him his due respects till such time that he succumbs to another loss. In our current duel, he's actually made a good play in changing the field to Umi. For those that didn't realise, Umi reduces all machine monsters by 500 attack and defense. That's about the upper limit of his dueling prowess. As you saw in the April Fool's Shadi video, Shadi's crappy dueling is due to his deck odds almost always granting him a weak deck. So sadly, with his defeat imminent, the Shades Meister has once more been classified as a pushover. All is now right in the world. YuGiOh then proceeds to steal Shadi's Millennium items. As Bandit Keith watches on, he is appalled by this behaviour. That is so disgusting. Who steals these days? Anywho, continuing the flashback to bide more time for Simon to complete work on our illegal casino scam, we move on to our next opponent, Yami Bakura. Now that we have a beefed up machine deck, let's take a look at it in a bit more detail. Our strongest attacking monster has gone from 1350 all the way up to 1850 attack, which is a really nice boost. We also finally have a universal equip card for the deck, and, believe it or not, our deck is actually capable of an inter-machine fusion. The monster that's capable of this is of course Ground Attacker Bugroth. Ground Attacker Bugroth will transform into Amphibious Bugroth if he's fused with an Aqua or Fish monster. There are a total of 2 machine monsters with those dual types, those being Metal Fish and Mech Bass. We won't actually fuse into him for this run, as sadly, that won't make him a machine. Big sad right there. You'll have to wait for the Fish/Aqua run to see him. Attacking for game with our Cannon Soldier, and Yami Bakura goes down. He drops us a Lady of Faith. Stealing yet another of our opponent's personal possessions, YuGiOh is but a madman that cannot be stopped. Keeping well away from this carnage, we watch a fire as per normal, in typical Bandit Keith fashion. Saving our game once more, we are up against our next opponent, who is none other than Maximillion Pegasus. Now, there's a bit of lore between Pegasus and Bandit Keith, actually a lot of lore, but rather than cover it off in this video, I'm going to actually save it for when I do the Bandit Keith character run. So instead, let me regale you with some more trivia. This time, we're looking at the card Blast Juggler. In Forbidden Memories, Blast Juggler is a dual type pyro monster, meaning it can be used for almost all pyro based fusions. As for the card game, Blast Juggler was the first fire machine monster in the OCG, debuting in Booster Pack 5. As for the DCG, it dropped in Metal Raiders. The card features in the artwork of Power Throw, and has not made any appearances in the anime. The next card on our list is Shovel Crusher, a card which only released in Champion Pack 7 of the TCG, allegedly due to a fan request. For its anime appearances, there are 3. Tristan obtained this card during his Capsule Monsters episodes, and the other 2 featured in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode 29 and 33. With our trusty Raigeki for the win, Pegasus goes down, gives us a fat rodent, and grants YuGiOh more eyes. Not wishing to anger the old ones any further, we go ahead and save our game. The next opponent we're up against is Isiz, and she may actually be a challenge to us because she frequents the use of the field spell card Umi, and has a few aqua monsters that can take full advantage of it. Setting our first monster, let's continue the trivia. The next card has a bit of a long history. We're of course talking about the card Cyberstein, aka Devil Frankens as they call it in Japan. In Forbidden Memories, it is a useless throwaway card. In the TCG, Cyberstein was released in Dark Beginnings, where it spent most of its life in the dark, stuck behind a ban list for 16 formats. As for its card art, Cyberstein is actually one of the monsters the censors missed when localizing it to this TCG. Strapped to its back is a double barrel shotgun, which the monster used to blow a hole through your wallet if you ever had plans to buy the Shonen Jump Championship Prize version of the card, which by the way sold for $7,000 US. As for its card art, another thing that I missed, it features in the background of Tool Bus to the Forbidden Realms. We are now down to our last 2 to 3 turns of the duel. There isn't much to say really. She's walled us off a bit using a defense position catapult turtle, and she summoned forth a fairly beefy aqua dragon. Thankfully, Mechanical Chaser comes in with a clutch victory there. If my voice throughout this recording starts to fluctuate back and forth, just know that I'm currently trying to get the little one to sleep. On to our last turn, Mechanical Chaser chases off a crazy fish, and we attack for game with Machine Attacker. We win. Isiz goes down and drops us a Yamatano Dragon Scroll. Pretty good drop if you're speedrunning this game. Making off with a necklace, we go back and save our game. Our final tournament match is against Kaiba. On the trivia front, we've reviewed about 11 out of 43 cards. This is going to take a while. So, with that said, as we were speaking of tournament cards the senses missed, the next card on our list is Dharma Cannon. It released back in Tournament Pack 2 and has not been reprinted since. Its face looks like a gun. It was strangely only censored in the Tag Force series of the games. And that's all there is to know. Kaiba is currently kicking the crap out of us because we haven't drawn into any good equipped cards. As long as we draw about maybe 2 or 3, we'll win this duel. So I'm just going to be grinding down my hand till that happens. In the meantime, here's some more trivia. The next card on our list is Dice Armadillo. In Forbidden Memories, if you fuse a beast and a machine over 1200 attack, it will result in Dice Armadillo. If it's less than that, you'll get Gigatech Wolf. Dice Armadillo released in Booster Pack 6 of the OCG and has not been reprinted in the TCG. The card itself is allegedly an homage to the 1991 NES game Armadillo, in which you collect dice. And there we go, right on cue. We drew a Mechanical Chaser and 2 Dark Energies. We can now run rampant against Kaiba. The only thing we need to look out for is a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Unless he drops one of his painful equip cards, but I don't think so. Popping off a Raigeki, we decimate more than half of his life points. Safe to say, I think we got this in the next turn. Summoning forth another monster, we destroy his face down with Cyber Soldier and attack for game with Mechanical Chaser. We win. Kaiba goes down and he drops us a Wicked Dragon with an Asat's head. Wow, those dragon drops. Witnessing Yugi grasp Kaiba's rod, I think now is a good time to end the flashback/flash forward. Wiping the Tyrant Yugi for our memory, Simon has almost finished our Jackpot 7 machine. In order for it to function properly, it needs all 7 Millennium items. Looks like we have some hustling to do. Now that we have some hardware and a team by our side, it's time to actually locate the site of our abandoned casino. Venturing down some more ruins, we meet up with Sidin. Being the ever so useful guide, the bloke once again has no idea where anything is. Well, better retrace our steps and check in on the palace for some clues. Bandit Keith, looking to try his luck again, trespasses and accidentally sneaks into one of the Mage Soldier's bedrooms. We really need to work on our break-ins. Startled, we're thrown into a duel. But thankfully, this opponent is rather weak, and getting the starting hand we just got makes this duel even easier. So on that note, let's drop some more trivia. This time, we'll talk about Gigatech Wolf. In Forbidden Memories, Gigatech Wolf can be obtained by fusing a beast and a machine monster under 1200 attack. Anything higher than that and you'll end up with Dice Armadillo. In the anime, Gigatech Wolf featured in episode 106 of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. During Noah's Ark, Nesbit used this card against Serenity, Duke and Tristan. Lastly, in the DS games, Gigatech Wolf had not been included in their release. Every other card from Metal Raiders was, except that. We defeat the soldier and he drops us a Skull Red Bird. After silencing the local residents, we conveniently stumble on another map. Back to Sidin we go. Hey, don't you sorta look like the guy in one of Pegasus's paintings? Coincidences aside, Sidin directs us to where we want to go. Amazed by the place, we are unfortunately tailed by Seto Security, who is now aware of what we're trying to plan. Not being paid enough to deal with this crap, he turns a blind eye and leaves us. Finding ourselves back in the overworld, we decide to check in on our crew at the old duel grounds. Having the directional sense of Roronoa Zoro, we walk into the wrong duel arena, but thankfully, Jono finds us and escorts us to the right place. Looks like the team is all geared up and ready for Keith's palace. As a precaution, I think it's best that we test them out in the duel before blindly leaving them to their own devices. Starting off, we have Jono 2. Now, based on where I am currently right now, I could go ahead and challenge the mages. I simply decided to duel Jono 2 and Teana 2 so I won't forget them, because I have a nasty habit of doing that. Our goal from this point of the game will be to challenge the mages that drop us the next set of machine cards. Unfortunately, it's both Kepura and Secmeton. Secmeton has a massive advantage over me having an Umi field. Kepura has a massive advantage given that he hits like a frickin' truck with his Gate Guardian. But that's future Jono's problem. For now, current Jono's going to rattle off some more trivia. This time we're looking at the card Ancient Tool. As mentioned in an earlier trivia, this card is a counterpart to Patrol Robo, being blue instead of orange. It featured in the TCG as part of Joey's Legendary Collection pack, and made an appearance in the anime as one of the cards in Bandit Keith's hand when he dueled against Joey. And that about wraps up our duel against Jono 2. He gives us a Frog the Jam, which is sadly not considered the Frog monster. I believe they should do that card justice and release a Jam archetype. Anywho, number 5 or 6, I've lost count. Our next duel is against Teana 2. I'm not expecting anything too groundbreaking, so let's just power through the trivia. The next quick card on the list is Disc Magician. This card is a counterpart to Hologra, and it released in Metal Raiders. That's about it. To get it in Forbidden Memories, you fuse a spellcaster with a machine monster under 1300 attack. Moving on, the next card we have is Saber Slasher, aka Sword Slasher. The reason I say aka is because its actual name in the TCG is Sword Slasher, and its Forbidden Memories name is Saber Slasher. They likely renamed this card several times because its Japanese name translated to Killer Machine. As for its anime appearances, the card debuted in episode 32. It can be seen in Bandit Keith's hand during his duel against Joey Wheeler. Speaking of things about to be killed, we drop a Raigeki for the win and attack for game with Machine Attacker, and Teana 2 goes down and gives us a Skull Servant once more. With our team thoroughly tested, we're happy with our results and we leave the duel grounds to make a start on hustling some VIP chumps. Those Millennium items are not going to collect themselves, so it's time to get our gambling freak on. The first mage on our hit list is the lower Meadow Mage. This guy is great. He will drop you a Metal Dragon, a Giant Mech Soldier, and a Steel Ogre Grotto at any B, C, or D rank. The strongest card you'll have to contend with is either a Labyrinth Wall or a boosted Judgeman, so basically 3500 for a defense monster or 2700 for an attacking monster. That is definitely doable with the current deck that we have. To top things off, if you're really struggling, you don't have to progress past Kepura in order to get this guy in your free duel. After you defeat him, simply retreating instead of proceeding and saving your game lets you unlock him in free duel, and you have all the time in the world to farm those 3 cards. Did I do that? No. No, I did not, because I'm a sadist and I tried to beat Lower Mage and Kepura at the same friggin' time. Don't be an idiot like me, go the safe route. Your sanity will thank you for it. Now that we've dropped a Mechanical Chaser at 3350 attack, we're safe for the remainder of the duel. So, let's continue on with some glorious trivia. The next card on our list is Gatekeeper. It's a card that released in Tournament Pack 8 of the TCG back in 06, and later again as a speed duel card in Scars of Battle. In the anime, this was one of many cards that Bandit Keith had in his hand in episode 32. The card also appears in part of Bandit Keith's flashback. After Keith passes out in the bar and drops his cards, this is one of the many drop cards. It appeared briefly once more in episode 106 in the virtual world, where Duke, Tristan and Serenity were building their deck against Nesbit. For the card art itself, it is a counterpart to the card Royal Guard. Let's cap things off there. With our final attack made with Mechanical Chaser, Low Meadow Mage drops us a Mask of Darkness. With the lower dweeb stepping aside, we enter the Meadow VIP room. Kepura and his Gucci gang aren't too happy with us door knocking to promote our casino. Being a betting man, we convince him to wager a visit if we're able to beat him in a duel. The key strategy we have against Kepura is hoping that he bricks his hand and summons down the Wall Shadow. If he does that, the strongest monster he'd probably move on us next should be under 3000 attack, unless he'd top deck something spectacular. We're going to have to play defensively until we draw enough equip cards to boost Mechanical Chaser to 4000 attack. With the gameplay footage seemingly mimicking everything I just said, I think we're pretty much set for this duel. It would be nice to have one more extra equip card, but him summoning down a Guy the Dragon champion should be more than enough for us to take him out. And massive bonus, we drew 2 Raigeki. That's GG easy. I didn't even have enough time to drop trivia. He summons another feeble monster, it's Sayaru this time round, passes a turn to us, and we drop a Raigeki for the win. Attacking for game with Mechanical Chaser, Kepura goes down, and he does not drop us any of the cards we're looking for. Oh well. Losing his bet, we take some wings off him, and we can definitely count on seeing him at our casino. Time for the dreaded Sea Shrine. And no, I'm not saying that as a joke. I have been dreading coming up against this shrine for this entire challenge. Umi nerfs our already weak monsters by 500 attack, and we simply don't have that much great consistency with our equip cards either. Now, I could have simply skipped this and come back later. In fact, I probably should have done that. But I'm really in need of that copy of Cybersaurus, and that only comes consistently from defeating Secmeton. So, let's suck it up and play in some water. Now, you probably saw at the start of this duel that I was setting up my deck with a few field spell cards. That was intentional. I really need to counteract the Umi for the Ocean Mage and Secmeton, because I will admit, I did not beat Ocean Mage first try. So, I learned from that mistake instead of throwing myself at it over and over again like I usually do. Whilst I take the time to grind up some attack points, I'm going to rattle off some trivia. The next card on our list is Metal Fish. In Forbidden Memories, Metal Fish is obtained by fusing a fish monster with a machine monster over 1400 attack. Anything less and you will end up with Misai Rizame. Metal Fish is also one of the only 2 machine monsters you can fuse with Ground Attacker Bugroth to receive an Amphibious Bugroth. In the TCG, the card debuted in the Spell Ruler pack, and has not made any anime appearances. Getting back to the duel, we've successfully changed the field to Wasteland and have a massive advantage over Ocean Mage. This is probably our last turn, so we fire off a Raigeki for the win, attack once with Saber Slasher, and attack the second time with Mechanical Chaser. We win a Candle of Fate, and this sadly took 4 attempts to beat. We enter the VIPD of the Shrine. VIPD stands for Very Important Poop Deck. Despite all his hoarded treasure, Secmeton's fit is looking pretty mid. Antagonizing him further with our insults, he challenges us to a duel. The 2 monsters we need to watch out for with Secmeton are his Suijin, his Aqua Dragon, and his Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. We need to pull out something of at least 3500 attack, or alternatively, change the field so we have a bit more of an advantage against him. I will say as a bit of a spoiler, this duel does drag out, so I'll cover off some trivia. The next card on our list is Golgoyle. Now, the way I did the trivia this time is a little bit different. Rather than me coming up with something, I actually asked ChatGPT for some trivia on this card, and the results are a bit questionable. Right off the bat, it says that Golgoyle released in the Pharaoh Servant set in 2002. That's not even close, it only released in the OCG as part of Booster Pack 3. The recounted stats are correct, but it somehow has invented an effect for it, despite being a vanilla monster, which reads that discarding a card from your hand increases its attack and defense by 300 points until the end of the turn. Hold on, it gets weirder. GPT thinks the etymology of the name Golgoyle is a reference to Golgotha, the biblical site where Jesus was crucified, and the word oil imagery suggests it's a connection to sacrifice or purification, which ties in with its made-up effect. I wish I was making this crap up. Its Japanese translated name is literally the word gargoyle. Lastly, the card artwork. GPT says it's a mechanized humanoid figure with a design reminiscent of ancient Egyptian imagery. Though the description may be a bit correct, ancient Egyptian is a pretty big stretch right there. And that is the 100% factual trivia of this card covered. Getting back to the duel, I've stalled him out long enough that I believe that I've been able to trigger the self-KO trick. I should probably remember to take better advantage of that when duels start to stall out. But anywho, number 6, there's nothing much of note. We are down to probably our last 2-3 turns. Beefing up a Sea King Dragon, he sadly does not attack into my Mechanical Chaser, but no matter, we have 2 Raigeki in our hand and it's safe to say we've won this. Once we clear out Secmeton, the plan from this point on will be to do some grinding. The opponents we need to farm from this point are the lower Meadow Mage, High Mage Kepura, and High Mage Secmeton. Everything else will need to be done after we defeat Seto 2, when we have a beefy enough deck to take on Labyrinth Mage and Heishin 1. But for now, Secmeton goes down, regrettably, in 6 attempts. The old man acknowledging that his fit is mid, the old man decides to increase his wealth at Keith's palace and buy some nicer looking clothes. In the meantime, we grind out and get a copy of Metal Dragon and Giant Mech Soldier from the lower Meadow Mage, Cybersaurus from Secmeton, and lastly, Mech Bass from Kepura. Unable to A-rank Kepura for the time being, we decide to ignore Giganto and Metal Fish for now. Instead, we're going to focus our attention on the Labyrinth Mage, Seto 2 and Heishin. So for now, our current deck looks like this. All we've really done is sub out our 3 weakest monsters with our 3 new strong monsters. All equipped cards for now remain the same. After dealing with a few VIPs, we decide to check in on our crew to make sure they haven't royally screwed things up. Surprise surprise, I should have expected this. Our cache here has been apprehended by Seto security and is currently being pursued by debt collectors. Is everyone in this town a friggin' deadbeat? Oh well. We make our way over to Heishin when we're stopped by his doorman. Now, unless I hear a proper haka out of this guy, those face tats are cultural appropriation, my dude. Labyrinth Mage is another opponent we need to farm from, but boy oh boy am I not looking forward to do it. Those familiar with this game may have already guessed it, but Labyrinth Mage is the easiest opponent we can fight who will drop a Labyrinth tank, albeit at a 0.05% chance. Now, if you're thinking that this is going to be a repeat of our Pyro video, think again. Labyrinth tank is not redeemable via card password unless you hack in some start chips. We have to do this the old slow fashion way. Getting back to the duel, we can already see a massive improvement in our deck. Having those spare 1800 attack monsters and some extra equip cards make things a heck of a lot easier. Attacking for game with Cybersaurus, he left us a Snakehair. Being caught out for being a fake Kiwi, Labyrinth Mage runs off, leaving us free to stroll right up to Heishin. Walking right in, after going right, left, right, we locate our missing cashier and her debt collecting assailants. Now what you're seeing right here is completely illegal. Under Australian ACCC law, debt collectors are unable to coerce, harass or use physical force to collect debts. I'd be inclined to dob you guys in, but I've been preoccupied breaking my own laws and setting up my illegal casino. Instead, I'm going to beat up your local security team. Which brings us to Seto 2, our next farm target. In an SA power rank, he'll drop us Machine King and Royal Guard if we don't want to farm them from Heishin 1. That is pretty handy, as I feel he is a slight bit weaker and Machine King is definitely a card I need for the final 6. Looking at the duel ahead of us, Seto 2 has summoned forth a Blackluster Soldier. This means that every other monster in his hand and probably the rest of his deck should be equal if not lower in power to that, which is good for us. So on that, let's look at our trivia. Looking at our numbers, we have 24 cards left, but only 12 duels to cover them in. I'm going to have to be selective and pick your favourites and maybe cover off the remainder in another video. So on that note, let's cover some trivia on Cybersaurus. In Forbidden Memories, Cybersaurus is obtained by fusing a dinosaur with a machine monster. In the TCG, it's a fusion monster that debuted in Metal Raiders. It used both Blast Juggler and Twin-Headed King Rex. The irony of that fusion is that Twin-Headed King Rex did not come out till 4 months later in Tournament Pack 2, and fusion substitute cards weren't a thing till Tournament Pack 1. Speaking of more things that didn't make sense, somebody please explain to me how a 2-headed dinosaur fused into a 1-headed monster. Anywho, we're now onto the last few turns of the duel. Getting back to me, we drop a Raigeki for the win and attack twice with mechanical chasers and bring Seto 2 down in one try. We won, and old mate dropped us a lesser dragon. Winning the game, we take our cashier and see ourselves out. Now you two dweebs need to keep your noses clean while I find the rest of these items. Back to the overworld we go, and let's pick up where we left off. The next shrine on our hit list is the Forest Shrine. There shouldn't be anything problematic thrown at us from this lower mage, so I'm going to jump straight into the trivia, because we have a lot of it to get through. The next card on our list is Metal Dragon. In Forbidden Memories, Metal Dragon is obtained by fusing a dragon and a machine under 1850 attack. As for its in-game typing, Metal Dragon is also considered a dragon and a pyro monster, making it very, very versatile. As for its anime appearances, Metal Dragon appeared in episode 133 during Joey's Battle City Dream, and then again later in episode 148 in Rex Raptor's Fantasy. As for the TCG, Metal Dragon was the first machine type fusion. And that's all there is to know really about this sentient train. Getting back to the duel, we attack into his Rude Kaiser with our Mech Bass, and attack for game with Mechanical Chaser. We win. Forest Mage goes down, and he gives us a Cherubin Fire Knight. With a lower mage down, it's on to Anubisius. The supreme branding all over this guy can only mean one thing. He has disposable income and he is terrible at managing it. A perfect VIP for Keith's Palace. The way to beat Anubisius is simple. Hope that he doesn't summon a perfectly ultimate Great Moth, and if he does, hope that you have a Raigeki in your hand to deal with it. So on that, let's jump to the trivia. And we partially covered this card in my Insect video. I'm of course talking about Launcher Spider, which is obtainable in Forbidden Memories by fusing a Metal Morph with a YuGiOh. In the TCG, Launcher Spider features on the artwork of Heavy Metal Raiders and also has a counterpart in BM4 Blast Spider. As for its anime appearances, Launcher Spider was in Kaiba's briefcase in episode 1, and summoned later again in episode 31 and 32 by Bandit Keith. Lastly, In episode 106, Tristan has this card in his hand during his duel against Nesbit. Looking at the card itself, Launcher Spider only has 6 legs instead of 8. As an Australian, I can say that is not a spider, but for the sake of its self-esteem, I'll treat its cannons on its back as its 2 missing legs. Which brings us to the end of YuGiOh. Since the duel is still going, I'm going to pop off another trivia real quick. This time, I'm going to look at the card Mech Bass. Mech Bass was the first water machine monster in the OCG, releasing in Booster Pack 4. It has not had any other anime appearances and has not been released in the English playset. It also has the face of every reaction channel on YouTube. That's about it for the trivia of this duel. The next card I'm going to cover off is Mechanical Chaser, but that is long enough to actually span across 2 duels. Instead, let's keep our focus on the opponent in front of us and defeat him in the next 2 turns. Passing back to Anubisius, he summons forth basically nothing. Because we have a Raigeki in our hand, we pop it off for the win and attack for game with Metal Dragon. We win! Supreme Anubisius goes down and we get a mysterious puppeteer. All of this in one try. On our way out, we claim another Millennium item for our Millennium slot machine and make our way over to the Desert Shrine. The lower mage is a joke, so let's just jump straight into the Mechanical Chaser trivia. Mechanical Chaser's card text says that it's a hunter that serves the Machine King. More on that later. In the TCG, Mechanical Chaser appears in the artwork of Covering Fire, Autonomous Action Unit, and Spark Breaker. As for its appearance in the anime, there's a lot of them. In episode 50 of Battle City, a possessed Bandit Keith used this card against Yugi. Later on in episode 88, you also see this card in Marik's flashback of the Rare Hunters testing their fake cards. To top it off for Battle City, Mechanical Chaser also appears in the opening. It's in the scene where the Rare Hunters summon a bunch of cards. On to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Mechanical Chaser appeared in episode 85 during Pegasus' flashback as he explains the process of counterfeiting cards to Jaden. It also appears again in episode 138 as one of the 3 monsters attacking the village. That's it for GX, so it's on to 5Ds. It was featured in episode 65 when Trudge was explaining the rules for the World Racing Grand Prix. Pause for now, lower mage is already down. Told ya, he was a joke. Catching our breath, we make our way to Martis. Having nothing better to do other than being pathetic in a desert, Martis spends his time risking it for the biscuit, trading in cryptocurrency. Being rightfully bored as backcrap at that endeavour, we invite him over to the casino. Given that we still need his Millennium item, we bully him into a duel. And with that, let's pick up where we left off on that Mechanical Chaser trivia. From 5Ds, we move on to Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Mechanical Chaser was shown in the duel during episode 81. And lastly, in Arc V, it appeared in episode 126 during Leo's explanation of the Solid Vision development. There's a lot of love for this card, and you know what, I think it deserves it. Getting back to the duel, we've drawn a bit of a dead hand against Martis. All we need to do is grind up some equip cards and get something over 2600 attack. That's it. So on that note, let's cover off the trivia for Machine King. Machine King has its own mini archetype. Lore-wise, there are a number of monsters whose flavor text mention that they serve the Machine King. Cards like Mechanical Chaser, Robotic Knight, and Cyber Soldier. The King itself has a 4-card storyline. It originated as Machine King 3000 BC, Machine King Prototype, the Machine King, and then Perfect Machine King. Machine King also appeared in the card artwork of Rear Misfire. Getting over to its anime appearances, it popped up in episode 50 when Bandit Keith was possessed by Marik, and later again in episode 105, used by Nesbit in his duel against Duke, Tristan and Serenity. Finally, it appeared in episode 112 as one of the monsters used in a tag duel between the Big Five, Yugi and Joey. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it appeared in episode 114 as Mr. Stein's flashback, and in 5Ds, it showed up again in episode 114 in one of Crow's many duels as Cup Ramen Man. I do not remember that episode of 5Ds, what the heck was that? Anywho, number 7, a Raigeki would be really good right now. There's a lot of monsters on the field, so I think maybe my only alternative would be to trigger the Self KO trick. That's probably the only way I can think of to speed this along. I think having 750 puts us at least close enough to be in range. Let's just see what he does in his next turn. Okay, summon something down. Yep, we've triggered it. All we need to do is sit back and watch him take himself out. And before anyone asks, no, I'm not adding it to the challenge list. Maybe a bit later if I'm really sadistic, but watching that run would probably be a bit boring waiting for the opponent to attack me over and over again. But I digress. Passing the turn back to Martis. Now. He summons a monster and does he attack? Yes he does, but he attacks the wrong thing. Leaving his Mud Barrel in attack mode, we finally get a Raigeki, a little too late, and attack for game with Mechanical Chaser. We win first try, he gives us a beaked snake, and we have successfully bullied him into giving us his Millennium item. We are now onto our last shrine, and it's the Mountain Shrine. Looking at our trivia count, we've covered 24 out of 43 monsters. Yeah, safe to say we're not getting through all of them in this video. I might tack them on at the end or make a quick vid later to cover them off. But enough fluff, the next card on our list is Labyrinth Tank. This pain in the butt card is obtainable from Labyrinth Mage at a 0.05% chance if you SA power rank him. It also drops as a 0.2% chance from Heishin and Heishin 2 if you're able to do the same. In the anime, it featured in episode 1 as part of Kaiba's briefcase bribe, then in episode 19 in the Paradox Brothers duel. In episode 44, multiple copies of this card appeared in the Labyrinth Maze that YuGiOh and his friends were navigating, and lastly, it showed in episode 46 on the TV monitors recording Duelist Kingdom. In the TCG, Labyrinth Tank has a retrained counterpart called Labyrinth Heavy Tank, and the original Bandai version of this card was green instead of blue. Wrapping that up in a neat little package, we're down to the last few turns of the duel. Mountain Mage struggles in vain and summons forth a Parrot Dragon, which does basically nothing, and we decide to settle this duel with a Mech instead of a Raigeki. We friggin' win. Mountain Mage goes down, he drops us nothing of note, we clean this up in one try and make our way to Atenza. Entering the shrine, we meet a pimp named Maz the 6 Atenza. Needing some place to wash his very dirty money, we inform him that Millennium Egypt has no concept of AML, so he's free to cash his money in and out as many times as he likes. Now, for this duel, if Atenza does not summon a Black Skull Dragon, we win. Simple as that. So with the limited time we have, I'm going to cover off the next card on our trivia list, which is Metal Zoa. In Forbidden Memories, Metal Zoa can be obtained from Sebek under an SA power rank, or alternatively, you can fuse into it by using a Zoa and a Metal Morph. It goes without saying that this card is the machine counterpart of Zoa. In the TCG, the card artwork of Metal Zoa appears in the artwork of Heavy Metal Raiders, like with almost every other machine. As for the anime, Metal Zoa debuted in episode 31 in Bandit Keith's duel against Joey. Metamorph in the anime was called Magic Metal Force, and its effect mirrored its ability in the manga. It not only transformed Zoa to Metal Zoa, but it let it become immune to magic attacks. Metal Zoa later appeared again in episode 32 during Keith's flashback, and once more in episode 60 in another one of Kaiba's briefcases. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it appeared in episode 24 during Zar's duel against Chaz, and lastly in episode 91 in Lucian Grimley's flashback. That's about it for Metal Zoa. I will also say in the anime, for the version of the Metamorph that was used, it reflects magic back to the user, instead of just making the monster immune to it. Anywho, we pop off a Raigeki for the win, and attack for game with Metal Dragon and Giant Mech Soldier. A pimp named Mazda 6 Atenza goes down, he drops us a Skull Red Bird, and we did this in one try. Remembering that we came here for Millennium items, we take his Millennium Ring. Forgetting to write a script for Seto popping up, I conveniently freeze the frame and head back out to the overworld. Time for the inevitable card grinding. Now that we've unlocked Labyrinth Mage, Seto 2, and have access to a stronger deck, the cards we need to hunt down are Machine King, Launcher Spider, Royal Guard, and Labyrinth Tank. This is where the challenge gets unbearably painful for me to make my life easy for the final 6. All 3 opponents that drop these cards need an SA rank in order to obtain them. Here are the odds for each card. For this grind, I'll be using a 15 card mod, with each single duel counting as 15 attempts. You'll see why in a minute. To make these grinds more consistent, I went out of my way to get a Bright Castle and a Mega Morph from Pegasus. Now, Seto 2 was relatively smooth, dropping us a Machine King and a Royal Guard in 2 attempts, aka 30 duels. Launcher Spider dropped from Heishin 1 after 7 attempts, aka 180 duels, and Labyrinth Tank, oh boy, 46 attempts, aka 690 friggin' duels. What did we learn from all this? Well, it turns out Heishin has a 0.2% chance to drop Labyrinth Tank. Despite our poor win-loss ratio, it works out much faster than dueling Labyrinth Mage over and over again. Wish I knew that from the start. The next thing we learned was to never ever do this ever again. Here's what our final 6 deck looks like. I've left some of our other monsters in there intentionally because of equip card compatibility. Also, I'll get the chance to show off their 3D models as we make it up to Nitemare. But for now, let's get back to the story. Having 6 of the 7 Millennium items, we come to find out that the Millennium Rod is currently in Heishin's possession as collateral. We need to make Heishin accidentally misplace it into our pockets. To the vast shrine we go. Sarah's security has basically given up on us at this point, so he lets us right in. On entry, we're greeted by more private security muscle who actually decide to do their jobs and slow me down. Let's get right into things with Sebek. Like with all of our playthroughs, Sebek and Neku aren't too challenging of an opponent. They're about as strong as Kepura. If you can beat Overgate Guardian, you can surely defeat those two. Now my goal with these final 6 fights is to show off the 3D battle animation for every monster in my deck. So you might see me from time to time take a bit longer in my duels than intended. But hey, nobody says no to awesome 3D artwork of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Getting on to our second turn, we have a Megamorph, hooray, and we have a Mechbass. Looks like Mechbass is going to be the first card we initiate a 3D battle with. But first, let's trip off an Acid Trap Hole and attack his face down, which is a Machine King. Shh, 3D battle time. With our mechanical bass usurping the throne, it should now be recognised as the new Machine King. All hail the Mechbass. As its first decree, it mandates that everyone own a big mouth billy and display that proudly on their mantelpiece. Hosanna to our fish overlord. Anywho, just so I can set up some time for the trivia in the next duel, the card we're going to focus on is Royal Guard, the thing we just destroyed right there. There's a bit of an interesting quirk that it has specific to Forbidden Memories, which I'll cover off in the next duel. For now, we're on to our last turn. We take out another Royal Guard with our Mechbass and take down Sebek with Machine King. He goes down first try and we make our way to Neku. Show us what you got, Birdman. Anywho, number 8 or something, let's continue on with the Royal Guard trivia. Like I said, there's an interesting oversight in Forbidden Memories with Royal Guard. For some context, Royal Guard is the counterpart to the card Gatekeeper. In the card artwork, between both cards, Royal Guard appears to be a freestanding floating monster on an orb, while Gatekeeper is attached to a gate via a portal. When initiating a 3D battle with Royal Guard, Forbidden Memories reused the 3D asset for Gatekeeper and just gave it a recolor, which they frequently do for card counterparts. As a result of this, Royal Guard has lost its orb when summoned in 3D. I'll trigger a battle later in the final 6 next time I properly draw the card. Quick pause, time for another 3D battle. Well, that was cool. Okay, now we move on to its anime appearances, and there's only one. Royal Guard featured in episode 1 inside of Kaiba's Bribe briefcase. And that wraps up the trivia for that card. Popping off a Raigeki for the win, we attack for game with Launcher Spider, and Neku goes down in one try. With deck collector Heishin's Goons Dispatch, we finally get to have an audience with the big man. After some sweet talking, he agrees to challenge us to a card game, wagering our Millennium items as prizes. Let the game begin. My goal in this fight is to once more show off some 3D battles. We might have a chance at that if Heishin does not summon Gate Guardian in turn 1. Leaving a Labyrinth tank in defense mode, let's see what he does. Summon forth, it's a Mars, it's Media Black Dragon. We can work with that. So on that note, let's jump into some trivia. The next card on our list is Pendulum Machine. It drops from Sebek at any B, C or D rank, which isn't much good to us now. In the real world, the figurine of Pendulum Machine released well before the card was printed in the TCG. Can't blame them, as it was one of the more iconic cards belonging to Bandit Keith. Anywho, that ties into its anime appearances, being in episode 31 and 32 of Duelist Kingdom. And that is all for Pendulum Machine. Currently I'm getting the ever-loving crap kicked out of me, which is not good. I'm gonna absolutely YOLO it, beef up a Labyrinth tank, and throw that right into Black Skull Dragon. 3D battle time. Exploding into a bajillion pieces, we pass the turn back to Heishin, who summons forth a defense monster. had his handy, that would have been game for me. With a lucky launcher spider in my hand, I summon that forth and I can finally hit over his meteor black dragon. That defense monster is probably a wall shadow, so we're out of the woods. Having 900 life points does make me a little... There we go, it was a labyrinth wall. Sorry. Having 900 life points does make me a little anxious. Reason being is that I don't want Heishin 2 to drop tremendous fire on me. Which he will do, just hoping he won't. Anywho, 3D battle time with the Machine King. Did it die? I can't tell, it looks the exact friggin' same. Questionably defeating a labyrinth wall, we attack his life points with Launcher Spider. It is now that Heishin top decks a friggin' Gate Guardian, which makes me very thankful that I have a Machine King on the field. Raigeking him away, we attack for game, and Heishin 2 goes down in one try. Fading away in defeat, Seto touches my rod without permission and runs off. He leads us, oddly, right to our abandoned casino. He used to bounce at this address, and he reveals to us that there is an active underground VIP lounge situated beneath. Not granting us entry, he tries to bounce us out once more. Time to put a stop to this security once and for all. And what better way to do it than with a fully stacked double Megamorph hand. Beefing up our sentient train, we are definitely hitting over a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. What does he do? Set, son, that is definitely an Ultimate Dragon. Putting down the king that is Macbeth, we set that aside for intimidation tactics and initiate another 3D battle. That battle gave me Gex 3D Dragon vibes. Getting to our last two turns, we attack directly with Macbeth and pass the turn back to Seto. Drawing to Raigeki, I think it's fair to say we drop one on this chump and say sayonara sucker for the last time. Attacking for the win with Metal Dragon, Seto 3 goes down in one try. Hooray, no more security. Flipping the frick out, Heishin pulls up and starts waving a knife at security. That is very Mount Druitt of you, sir. Heishin calls in his mob boss Big Bunny. Now disclaimer, due to budget constraints, we couldn't get Kevin Hart, so he called in a favour to a monarch in England to have his Egyptian brother fill in for us instead. Big Bunny, being furious at Heishin's loss of funds, decides to reenact our pyro run and promptly sets him on fire. I vibe with this reality. Confronting Big Bunny, negotiations start to collapse, which results in Keith activating his strap card. Realising his mistake in stepping up to the intercontinental champ, by the way, Keith is the intercontinental champ, we decide to resolve things in a duel. Now, we have 14 cards left to cover trivia off. I'm not really gonna bother with that for these last two duels. I feel it will take away from the magic of this gameplay. And by magic, I mean beating the ever-loving crap out of him with a Megamorphed Mechanical Chaser. Instead, I'll drop him in their own video. But for now, setting a widespread ruin for protection, we kick off a 3D battle. Drilling into Cosmo Queen like those flying spheres from the Phantasm, we pass the turn back to DarkNite, and he is adequately horrified like I was when I first saw that as a kid. Sadly, I don't draw into another card that I can show off a 3D battle for. I think the one I'm looking for is Cybersaurus at this point, but I hope I can draw it in the next few turns. No, not hope, I will. I'm friggin' determined to bring that card out because I don't actually think I've seen it as a 3D model. So apologies in advance for this duel taking longer than it should, but hey, we are not ending this run without seeing a mechanical dinosaur. I mean, come on, that just sounds sick. Scaring the ever-loving daylights out of him with our impressive field presence, he's got nothing of note to summon against us. He can use a Crush card or a Raigeki, because he does have those in his deck, but with our massive field presence and ample equip cards, I think we're fine. Speaking of, we finally draw a Cybersaurus. What sucks, however, is there's nothing on the field to attack it. There we go. He sets something, we beef it up once more because why not, and we kick off a 3D battle. Geez, somebody gave Godzilla crack and a machine gun. I will say that they nailed the bullet physics in almost all the machine fights, because everything I've done so far involves someone getting shot. Oh, back to the duel, we managed to get a Royal Guard and kick off a 3D battle. Remember my early trivia? The asset that they're using in this fight is actually the card Gatekeeper. Yes, if it wasn't obvious, I purposely sacrificed my monster for that fight. Couldn't finish this game without showing it off. Attacking with Cybersaurus, DarkNite goes down, in one try. With the deck collector's facade fading away, it turns out it was the Konami Corporation all this time. Yes, you heard me, it was Konami Group Corporation. They are one of the largest manufacturers in Japan for slot machines and pachinko machines. Not wanting to be outdone by Bandit Keith, they decide to try and silence us. And seem to be doing a really crappy job of it. Fusing 2 cards into a Meteor Black Dragon, it proves that Nitemare didn't draw a Gate Guardian, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, or even a Black Skull Dragon. GG easy, this is looking like a free win for us. Attacking with a Labyrinth tank, we pass the turn back. Setting something in defense mode, I can only assume it's probably a Wall Shadow or a Labyrinth Wall. Beefing up our Sentient Train to some ungodly attack power, we attack it with a 3D battle with Labyrinth tank. Take note, we'll get a different battle animation because I set it as a Mercury sign. Was not expecting friggin' lasers, but I'll take it. Getting back to the duel, there's only one thing left to do. Attacking directly with Metal Dragon, Nitemare goes down in one try, gives us a baby dragon, and we have put an end to all our competitors and adversaries. Playing that victory song, Keith sits atop his throne and watches the money roll in. So, can you beat YuGiOh Forbidden Memories with a machine type deck? Yes, yes you can. Saving our game, here is our code for Duelist of the Roses. Time for the run wrap up. The campaign took 46 duels to complete. Of that, 8 of those were losses. In free mode, gosh get ready for this, we took a total of 1,275 duels. Yep, 1,275. To be fair, there were a lot of monsters that we needed to grind off opponents, so that number is to be expected. Regardless, all up, that was a total of 1,321 duels. The average duel duration during the campaign was 2 minutes and 53 seconds, with the campaign itself taking 2 hours and 13 minutes approximately. Now, onto the rankings. I'm placing these versions of machines in the upper B tier, and the key reason for that is Labyrinth Tank. Given that it's a drop so horrendous, it is entirely likely that it won't make it into most people's endgame decks. That will make Machine King the strongest monster at 2200 attack, which is basically on par with insects having YuGiOh. Machines get a massive improvement in power after the final 6 are unlocked in free duel, so I'll rank the post-game version of this deck separately. I'm expecting that to land in A tier very easily, but more on that in another video. Hey everyone, Jono here. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. This channel has now hit over 20,000 subscribers and I have all of you amazing people to thank for it. Before I sign off, I just want to give a super thank you to LilyLaser666 for quite honestly, the longest support streak to this channel. Count on my sub if you ever start making videos. I also want to thank all of you for the hype and kind messages I've received on the arrival of my little one. Though you are all but strangers to me on the internet, I am virtually hugging you all as if you're family. Anywho, comment below on what type you'd like to see next. And don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell icon to stay notified of my next release. And as always, stay awesome people. Hope you all draw a Raigeki for the win, and I'll be seeing you all soon.